Good morning, it's Mark Lanier with part 2 of your video thought for the day on Is This the End of the World? In part 1, I talked about the huge plague outbreak in the 1340s into the 1350s, even into the 1360s that happened in the medieval world of Western Europe and England. And I did that for a reason. Right now, we look at the outbreak of the coronavirus. We've got over 1 million cases. We've got spiraling death rates. In the United States alone, over 50,000 at this point, estimates that range from 70 to much higher than even that by the time this is over. It's got people questioning, is this the end of the world? Is this a sign of the end of the world? I want to look at it biblically this week, but with reference to the history that I talked about before, because there have been 3 massive outbreaks of plague, at least that we know about in history, in the world since Jesus was present on earth. And if we look at this historically, we understand something that's key to the biblical knowledge of, is this the sign of the end of the world? Here it is. The biblical ages are divided. And the final age is called the last days, or the last times. We are in the last days. But don't think that means that the return of Jesus is happening today or tomorrow or next week or next month, or that the world is going to end as we know it right now. Because, here's the key, biblically, we've been in the last days since the crucifixion and resurrection and ascension of Jesus. All of this time period, until Jesus returns again, is called the last days. That's why in the book of Acts, in the very first and second chapter, when Peter's trying to explain to the people the coming of the Holy Spirit on Pentecost, he uses the prophecy out of the Old Testament book of Joel, and he says, haven't you read, in the last days, your sons will have visions, your daughters will prophesy, etc., etc. Old men will dream dreams. All of that. Peter was saying, we're in the last days. Peter says it over and over and over. Paul says it over and over and over. Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, the first chapter, the second verse says, in these last days, because it's already in the last days. The epistle of James, chapter 5, says, in the last days you have stored up treasures. 2 Peter says that scoffers will come in the last days, and scoffers do indeed come in the last days, but they've been around since the time of Jesus. So are we in the last days? Absolutely, biblically we are, but not because of this plague. Now, some people may get confused because in Revelation chapter 15 and 16, it talks about 7 angels with 7 plagues that'll be poured out upon the earth with God's wrath. But that's not what we're dealing with here. Those plagues are plagues that will cause the oceans to turn to blood and all the fish to die. Those are symbolic of events that will be occurring where everybody who has the mark of the beast will get boils on one of the plagues. One of the plagues turns rivers into bloods. One of the plagues turns the sun into causing people to burn up in fire. That's not what we're about here either. What we're about here is something that's tragic, it's something that's explainable, and it's something we need to deal with. But when we do it, we can remember what Jesus said in Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, Jesus' followers said, how will we know when it's the last days and the Son of Man's coming again? And Jesus gives a long statement of a number of different things, combining both the problem with the temple being destroyed in the Roman rebellion that Israel had, Judah had, but Jesus also talked about the final coming. And he said, nobody, not the angels, not even the Son of Man, nobody but the Father knows when that is. And it will come when you're not suspecting it, just like the flood of Noah. So if we're expecting the second coming to happen and the end of the world to happen, I would almost say that's a sure sign it's not about to happen. But leave those mental games aside. The point of this matter is we don't know when Jesus will come again. And if anybody tells you this is a sign that we're in the last days, you can answer biblically, of course, we've been in the last days for 2,000 years. And we certainly still are. And so when the plague outbroke in the 6th century with Justinian, by the way, it was Pope Gregory who said when people sneeze, it might be an indication they're getting the plague, so you should pray a blessing over them. That goes back to the 6th century plague outbreak. And that's why we say, God bless you when you sneeze. But side trivia note, the plague was much worse then than it is now. The plague in the 1300s killed half the population. Totally rewrote history. The Spanish flu in the early 1900s killed boatloads more. Every age, every generation will be able to talk about wars and rumors of wars and famines and all of the signs of the last days, because we are in the last days. We have been in them for 2,000 years, and we will be in them until the Lord comes again and this world as we know it is over. So I hope that helps you during this time with your video thought for today. What it means is live every day valuable to the Lord, because we don't know when it's our last day or the last day. But we do know that while God's put us here, we try to bring Him glory in our life. That's your video thought for today. See you tomorrow.